opinions expressed are the speaker's own and does not represent legal or accounting advice or counsel and should not be seen as such. The material and information presented here is for general information purposes only, a conversation. We make no promises or assertions on how this information will impact your business, your personal life, or financial well-being. The information relayed does not imply endorsement or offer opposition to any specific organization, product, or services. My name is Lori Power, and I'm your host. Let's have a conversation. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Michael Kerr, author of many books, including one of my favorites, The Jerk-Free Workplace. Today, we're going to delve into his latest book, Small Moments, Big Outcomes.
Nothing like the smell of a brand new book. Hey everyone, Michael Kerr here. I'm excited to announce my latest book, Small Moments, Big Outcomes, How Leaders Create Cultures That Fuel Extraordinary Results. This book is decades really in the making. It is based on my research for years of inspiring leaders and organizations around the globe, packed full of ideas, examples, and stories, relevant ideas that will help you lead with greater intention and purpose and confidence. It's about not just being a leader, but what you need to do to be an inspiring culture leader, what that looks like, what it means to intentionally lead a great culture, because we know culture is the #1 driver of success. It is your #1 competitive advantage. This book challenges you to think about what you want your legacy as a leader to be. It's all about creating the kind of workplace where everyone wants to work. It's about creating a less soul-sucking, fun-sucking workplace and a more compassionate, humane, collaborative, resilient, innovative, service-focused, and yes, fun workplace that drives extraordinary results. And the reason it's called Small Moments, Big Outcomes is because it really is so often about just the small things that you do as a leader, the small things that your team does, the small things you need to do in your organization that actually do make a profound difference.
How fast was I in jumping up to get a copy of that book?
You were very fast. You probably broke a record.
But you know what? I was excited because I've always liked your books, Michael. I think that they hit perhaps a nerve and they are easy to they're not necessarily that it's easy to implement, but they're easy to get behind the stories. And that I think was what makes you a really good author is your retelling of the stories. Your first chapter is interesting that it's not, you didn't open with inspiration. You know, you opened with some sobering thoughts on what it is to work. We all need to work, in my opinion. I think work is good for the psyche in many cases, but you do make the argument that as good as the work is for the psyche, it is also a killer in many cases. Both it deteriorates our health and it deteriorates our mental health. Why start there?
Yeah, I believe like the second line is a joke, is it not? Like, how's that for motivating
Really?
opening? Yes, yes, you nailed it. Not an inspiring opening. It's kind of a downer. But I hope
It does
I
make
hope I
me
deliver
sit
the
up and
message in a
take
fun way.
notice, you know, which is, I think, what your intention would have been.
Yeah. So the reason I open with that, and I talk about this in most of my talks, is my starting point, and the reason I'm passionate about workplace culture is because life really is short, and this thing called work has a huge, profound impact on our life. And so let's remember that. Let's prioritize creating healthy, happier, more fun workplaces, because this sucker called work matters.
I love the line that you say, and you say, you owe it to your employees and their family, to your colleagues and their customers, and yes, to yourself, to step up fully as a leader and create a kinder, more compassionate, and ultimately inspiring workplace that works for everyone. That is a powerful line to add in the beginning of your book. And if I may say, in getting to the end and talking about the weeks, it really does sum it up well. But how do we do that?
Well, we do it, first of all, I think, by
by just being aware, right? By being more self-aware and by being intentional. Everything comes down to intentionality. So it's about being intentional as a leader and deciding what that means to you, right? And recognizing, as I stress throughout the book, I talk about the importance of people thinking themselves as not just leaders these days, but as culture leaders. And so it takes intentionality. You have to be intentional about that. And what is the difference between being a manager and being a leader? Because there is a difference. And then being intentional about your culture. So hopefully through that book, I've motivated people or inspired people to take their culture seriously by explaining why it matters so much, why it's your number one competitive advantage, how it profoundly affects every aspect of your organization and your employees' happiness and mental health and physical health, as you were just saying, Lori. But you've got to then be intentional. So once you've decided, yeah, this culture stuff really matters, what are you going to do to put it into practice? How are you going to be intentional as a culture leader? Which means everything, as I explore in the book, from hiring with your culture in mind, training, coaching, mentoring employees with your culture in mind so they understand what your values are, so they're living your culture values out loud. It comes down to when you make decisions, and this is one thing I really urge leaders to do when I coach them and speak to them is uh, getting in that habit, that mindset of every time you make a workplace decision, seeing it through the lens of your culture. So how does this decision reflect your desired culture? Does it? And will it help you create your desired culture?
Would you agree, Michael, that many times a leader has to walk away from their ego
Oh,
in
yeah.
order to create a culture? You know, ego thinking that you're the only one who can do something, and if it's going to get done, I better do it myself so that it can be done well. And how demoralizing is that to the rest of the team?
Oh, totally, totally. That's a huge part of it, Lori. I'm glad you brought that up. I don't think we talk about that nearly enough. When the ego gets in the way, yeah, that's when you tend to micromanage, which drives employees nuts. And it doesn't just drive them nuts, it drives them away because nobody likes working for a micromanaging boss. One of the most powerful forms of recognition at work there is to appreciate your employees' talents and their wisdom and their skill and let them free to do the work they know how to do already. If you've hired them properly, trained them properly, and if they have the proper tools, then let them go be brilliant for you and don't get in the way of that. In fact, I stress in the book and I stress in my talks too that very often it is the things we have to stop doing as leaders that are demotivating people as much as it is as the things we have to start doing. And ego gets in the way of us, I think, being self-aware of our behaviors, of how we might be impacting the people around us. Ego definitely gets in the way of wanting to hear feedback from our employees or our peers, right? And if you're going to develop as a leader, if you're going to grow as a leader and be a more effective leader, you have to be open to getting honest, constructive feedback from your employees. And that's difficult. It's difficult for all of us, right? To ask for feedback. Really, really challenging, but we have to get over that, especially if you are in a leadership position.
And action the feedback too. It's
Yeah,
not enough. I mean, how many times over the years do you get asked these questions for feedback? You give the feedback and there's no action taken.
yeah,
It's why did you ask me? So then they'll come and they'll ask you again. And it's,
right,
by then it's like I have no intention of wasting my time to
right,
let you know exactly the same thing that you didn't action the first time.
right, right. There's a term in the book. Do you remember the term I use in the book for
No,
that?
I'm not
For
going to get caught on those things. No.
well, I'm surprised I remember it. People always ask me about things that are in the. I don't know. I haven't read it in a long time. I wrote it. I mean, but I haven't read the sucker. Um,
Like me, you write it and move on.
yes, move on. That's not completely true. It's a little bit true, actually. Yes, the term I use is "don't be an ask hole," ASK. You know, right, where you keep asking for ideas or asking for feedback or asking for input, and you don't listen to anyone.
I think collaboration, effective collaboration comes when you build confidence within that culture.
Yeah,
So one of those items that I look at when I'm working with business owners and their staff members on the benefit side, and we see it, and people come in and they talk and they say, okay, we have this culture, we have this, we have that, but we're having disconnected teams. We're not having
Right.
true collaboration. And I do believe that these things feed into one another. As I read in your book, I know that you already agree with that, that when ego gets in the way and you micromanage, and then you say, okay, well, teams, go ahead and collaborate. They collaborate, you ask for their feedback, you don't action the feedback, and you have nothing but a schmozzle and nothing's getting done.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You create a schmozzle. I love that word. You schmozzle things up. Yeah,
Well, and nobody knows which way is up.
right.
And
Yeah,
and you're told to work in a collaborative method, but yet everybody knows the underlying core is, and you talk about this in the book very much as well, especially coming onto the end, is the blame and the shame,
right.
right? And then we revert into a blame and shame culture.
Yeah, totally, totally. Right. So that speaks to the heart of so many things that we have to do in our teams, in our workplaces. It speaks to the need to build trust, which is an ongoing process and involves all sorts of different factors. It speaks to the need to create a sense of belonging for everyone, where they truly feel like they belong on your team, in your workplace, and recognize there's a difference between fitting in and belonging. So it's not about just fitting in, it's about truly belonging in your workplace, on your team. And then it's about that thing that we hear more and more about these days, psychological safety, where people feel safe to speak up, to challenge ideas, to suggest outrageous ideas, to point out serious workplace issues that you might otherwise not speak up about because you haven't built that safety and people don't feel comfortable. There's no trust, there's no safety. So I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to sit here quietly and do my job.
And you could become a lifer doing that. You could become a long-term employee who is, according to statistics, very good. We're not having turnover, but what we're experiencing then is we're experiencing presenteeism.
Yeah.
Somebody who's just doing the bare minimum. We haven't attracted the best to our organization. And I love how you wrote that if you are attracting the best or you want to attract the best, remember everybody else wants that employee as well. So
Right.
that is something that, even though that seems so obvious, Michael, when I read how you put it down, it was like, yeah, we want to attract the best, but let's not think that we're the only one in the dating pool.
Right. Yeah, totally, totally. So as I stress, if you are wanting to hire the best, as you say, well, the best can go, in theory, any darn place they please. So you have to spend as much time selling yourself as a company, selling your culture to your employees as much as you want them to sell their attributes to you. And I think it's really valuable to look at it through that other lens, to promote your culture on your website, on social media, wherever you can, to sell your culture. And I'm not talking about the just the pay and the perks and those standard we provide a competitive package of blah blah, but your actual culture, like what is it like to work with you, what are your values, bring them to life in fun ways, have employee testimonials, and make sure it's a match. Even if it's a great employee, they may not be a great employee for you because of your culture. So you've got to spend the time, the energy, put the resources behind your recruiting and hiring practices to make sure it's a fit both ways.
And when you do that, we talk about building value within corporations, and ultimately, many entrepreneurs want to build their business so that they can sell their business. It's their number
Right.
one asset. And what a more viable business to purchase than a business that has a proven culture, that is making money hand over fist because of the culture. People are engaged in doing the work that they're doing. It just makes so much sense to me,
Right.
Michael, that people would put the effort in if long term they want to build a valuable corporation.
Totally right. And you bring up a really interesting point, Lori, too, is ideally your culture should be strong enough. Your culture should have enough legs, enough of a legacy, a history, and be strong enough that it outlasts or outlives any one leader. So in theory, it should not be taken over when a new boss comes into town, when the new sheriff shows up. Everything should not change. Your culture should be strong enough that it carries on regardless of significant changes within your company.
And the new sheriff in town, so to speak, would be enveloped into that culture
Right.
rather than feel that need to completely change that culture, which, if I have a machine that's making me money, why do I want to, sock it up with things that aren't going to work, right?
Right. Right. Yeah, totally.
Now, this is book what number for you? You've
This
written
is
so
number
many good.
9, Lori.
Number 9.
Number
I
9.
want to know what inspires you when you start working, because I know as an author to author, I know you probably have another book in the works in your head on how you're going to put something out, and I'll get into that in just a moment. But what inspires you when you're writing these books? Because you can take them from the beginning to the latest one and really see an evolution of, really, if you wanted to put an encyclopedia in there on how to build better workplaces and workplace culture, then we start at the beginning and we move all the way through with these tremendously good stories. What's inspiring to you when you're writing?
Well, what inspires me are the stories that I talk about in the book, right? Because I have gone into businesses all over the world and met these leaders, met CEOs and presidents of companies, and sat down with teams, and their stories totally fuel my mojo and get me excited about this stuff. So in a lot of ways, I'm just like a conduit for these brilliant people out there and these amazing organizations that are doing very cool things, that are building very humane, positive, fun, compassionate workplace cultures. And so I love sharing that message with the world. So what inspires me is bringing those stories together and then writing a book that I think, that I hope will resonate with a lot of folks and truly have an impact on their lives, on their workplaces. And so I very much write with that in mind. I try to make sure I'm always being relevant with the stories, that I'm bringing it home to practical, doable, easily implementable ideas. And as I mentioned in the book, I think several times, okay, maybe you can't do this because you're a smaller company, you don't have the budget, you don't have the resources, but you can do this, right? You can take a piece of that idea, you can do at least do something that falls under that same idea, that same principle, to build a more inspiring workplace culture.
And you can adopt the mindset. The mindset is free. Being a decent human being is free.
Yeah,
And really, if those are the beginning starting points, then doesn't that just make sense that we can all do that in our business?
totally, totally. It just starts by being more human.
I love the story of the window washers in the children's hospital.
Yes. Mm.
And can you share that story?
Yeah, it started in a children's hospital in London, England, and the window washers dress up as superheroes when they wash the windows there. So there's Batman and Wonder Woman and Spider-Man and all these great superhero costumes, and that idea has spread all over. It's spread to every continent, all over the world. You see these great stories, and I tell that story as an example of a fun way to connect employees to a greater sense of purpose in their jobs. So with that example, instead of just feeling like the window washers, that often, let's face it, they're invisible, they're ignored, we don't think about it very much. Oh, they're washing the windows, nice to have clean windows, I suppose. But dressing up as superheroes, this has transformed their sense of purpose. Now they feel more connected to what the purpose of a children's hospital is. They are making these kids' day. I mean, can you imagine being 10 years old and looking out the window and seeing superheroes come down the window? That would just be right, incredible. So it's just one of many examples, and a fun example of how we can come up with creative ideas, or maybe craft the job in a little bit of a different way, even change the job title, to give our employees a greater sense of meaning and purpose in their work.
Now, this example is was in one of your other books because it leads me into thinking about the janitorial staff
Right.
in the hospital and how the when they started to interview some of the janitorial staff, they saw their job as being incredibly important, and it was and is continues to be incredibly important because they are the sanitizers. They are the people that keep the place clean so that the medical professionals can do their job in the best environment. And one seems to lead to it to another. Like when we see these people's purpose for their job, and that translates into that culture that no, you're not just the floor cleaner, you're not just the window washer, you are important to the overall aesthetics and culture of our organization and getting people well again. I mean, like you said, how impactful for a child to who may feel overwhelmed, not understand a lot of things that are going on and to them in that moment, but yet there's a superhero, right?
Yeah.
That superhero is cleaning my window today. I think that is just it's an incredible story.
Yeah. Excuse me. Yes, I'm getting choked up. Yes, it is. Yeah, it is, right? It's an inspiring story. It's a fun story, and I hope it inspires other people to get a little creative and think about how they can, shift things around a little bit and a lot of it is just mindset too, right? Though it's just remembering, and as leaders, making sure we're making those links to remind people, yeah, your job matters, and here's why. You may be one of the kind of supporting cast or behind the scenes players in your team, uh, an underdog who often gets forgotten, right? So we have to be extra vigilant, extra intentional about recognizing those people and connecting them to a greater sense of purpose.
Absolutely. And I'm one who is a firm believer in the old-fashioned hard copy snail mail birthday cards.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah.
And you had mentioned that, one of the CEOs that you had interviewed does, always has the birthday cards with him, is always writing those cards. And I know from my own experience, I'll share this with you, and that's why the story in your book resonated with me, is because from the very beginning, when I got into business, I thought birthdays are important. They're the one thing that we all share uniformly. So
Right.
you can send out a holiday card, but not everybody believes in that holiday, right? You can do different things, but a birthday card is a birthday card. And over the years, Michael, I will tell you, I've gotten some of the most heartwarming phone calls from people, and especially the last few years where it's so digital and digitized, where
Right.
people have said to me, "You're the only one who remembered."
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And doesn't that say a lot of where we are and how sometimes what when I'm putting them together and you think, okay, well, I'm really busy. Do I have time to do this? Maybe I'll stop doing it. I always remember those one phone call or two phone calls. It's not all the time, but when it happens, I selfishly, I do it for me. It
Yeah.
makes me
Yeah.
feel good that I remembered.
For sure, right? For sure. And yeah, just that those personal little touches. They're small, they're easy to do, but as you say, they have such a big impact on people. It doesn't take much. And you raised a really important point, and I talk about that in the book. The more we perform acts of service for other people, when we are kinder and more compassionate and recognize other people, it comes back to us probably twofold. It's one of the most powerful ways for us to feel happier and more fulfilled in our jobs.
Well, and you had mentioned it as well. Values are not written on a wall, on a page. Values need to be lived. And when
Right.
we're living up to our values first in ourselves through our actions, makes it easier to stay ethical, makes it easier to stay compliant. On that note, I do want to turn the tables on you a little bit. And I say, what is a moment when you had to make a difficult decision to keep with your value set? And this may be going back to when you worked in that managerial stranglehold job, but turning the tables on you on what was a moment like that for you?
Well, it's that's a great question, and one I've thought about, frankly, a lot more in the last few years, because I I can't really speak to the issues, but I can tell you that the last couple of years, um, as a leader and as a former leader in my professional association, I have taken a couple of stands that were very, very much values based, and I paid a little bit of price for that, as we sometimes do, right? Because I talk in the book, like, if you were really being true to your values, sometimes it's like a big gulp moment, and it's going to be a little painful. But if those suckers mean anything to you, then you have to make sure you're congruent with your values. That actions speak louder than words, and talk is cheap. And so there's been a couple of episodes just in the last year and a half where I had to make some really, really difficult decisions to stand by my values. And it's been an interesting learning and reminder for me when I talk about values, as I do all the time, that it's not as easy as we sometimes say it. It's easy, and I say this in the book, right? It's easy to live our values out loud when times are going great. We're
Yes.
flush with money, everything's good, and then, well, yeah, because you can afford to, right? It's easy. It's when times get challenging, when times get rough, where there's a lot of change, a lot of uncertainty, or interesting decisions that are made that maybe you seem contrary to your values, that you then have to make the difficult choice to speak up. And what's been fascinating to me is observing some of the behaviors of some of my peers, who are very dismissal of me living up to my values. Everything, like, being greeted with everything from rolling eyes, like, really, or coming up with excuses or rationalization as to why I could just let go of my values, because it's just this one time. It's just once, right? And so it's
But the
been,
one time turns into that rolling rock going down the hill, doesn't it?
well, exactly. Yeah, it doesn't matter that it's just one time. This is a serious issue, and I'm standing firm by my decision.
And I can so appreciate that. And the thing that comes up very often in my line of work is everyone else is doing it.
Right.
And so if everyone else is doing it, why are you pushing against the tide? Why are you, you know, and sometimes we have to recognize that just because everybody else is doing it doesn't mean that we need to do it. And a personal pet peeve for me is this ghosting business. I was going to
Yeah.
lay it out on the table. It's nothing to do so much with values, but in a way it does, because you make a commitment to get back to somebody and then you ghost them, and it seems to be an acceptable response no matter where you're going. And
Yeah.
it's not acceptable.
No, no, and it does speak to values, I think, totally. And it's funny that you should mention that, because I feel like since the pandemic, I have never been more ghosted by potential clients in the last 2 or 3 years, and it's really, really frustrating. And, like, totally 100% ghosted. Where we're
Yeah.
moving down, we're talking, we're having conversations, even in a couple of cases where I had contracts ready, and then total darkness, just gone and ghosting. And I'm like, that's
And
totally a
and
values
it's a
thing.
respect thing, isn't it, Michael?
It's
Because
Yes,
we're adults, we're professionals. If you don't want to work together, then let's just not work together. That's
yeah,
okay. I can
yeah,
handle that. It's not a fit, obviously, if it's not a fit for you. But this ghosting, this avoidance, this that just is a personal pet
yeah.
peeve for me.
Oh, I'm with you, Lori. Stop ghosting people. Don't ghost people. Like,
Well,
one line in an email, that's all you need sometimes,
you
right?
can even chat GPT it for
Yeah,
heaven's.
something. Yes, just do something. Sorry, it's not going to work out this time. Yes, I've received your 87 emails. Oh, yeah, it drives me.
Absolutely, absolutely. What do you think holds business owners back? Doesn't matter the size. What do you think holds business owners back from truly taking a look at their culture?
I think number one, I think, is just lack of awareness, in terms of it being a priority, or the priority that it should be. And I I think until you show a lot of leaders the numbers, the financial impact, the business bottom line impact that their culture could be having on them, they just don't see it as important. And you'll hear them, and I hear it all the time. Right? Oh yeah, we talk about our culture. Well, do you? Do you really? We kind of talk about our culture. And I've done surveys. I've done surveys in my audiences, and the vast majority admit to not treating it as a priority, to not treating it as a fundamental focus in their business. So I think a lot of it just starts with awareness as the first step, right? They just don't see it as a priority. And then the second thing is I think a lot of them just don't know how to tackle it. You know, it's this kind of vague, amorphous thing, this culture thing that, yeah, maybe we need to work on it better, but I don't know where to start, right? So I think those two things are the biggest impediments to people diving in properly with their culture.
And I think if we could show people the link, but there isn't a distinct link that's crossover between all businesses, but there is a link you and I absolutely know when you put in culture to profit,
Yeah,
right? If
totally.
we're like, let's not mince words. We're in business to make money. That's why we do what we do. We want to be profitable. We want to be successful. The culture will create that profit. It will create that value, and it can create such wealth within your employees' psyche as well. Their mental and emotional well-being. And it always translates to me into more productive, more engaged, more present, employees that are wanting that company to succeed.
Yeah, totally. I mean, everything moves in the right direction when you focus on culture. Everything. And I've interviewed leaders all over the world. I always ask them the old cliche question: what's been more important to your success, your culture, or your strategy? And every one of them says it's our culture. Culture drives our success. It drives our ability to attract better employees, to keep those employees, to keep them engaged, to keep them inspired and motivated so they are bringing their ideas and passion and loyalty to our business. It affects our customer service. It affects every aspect of how you do work.
Excellent. What's next? What's the next book? What's next on the horizon for you?
It's funny that you should say that. I've got several ideas floating around. One that I'm just kind of tinkering with right now, and it will be a very small book. It will be kind of a niche, and I'm envisioning this kind of fun small book. But I've been talking more and more about this idea of deep fun. This intersection between purpose and curiosity and fun at work, and this notion that I talk about, where if you adopt this mindset that it's fun to come up with ideas to wow your customers, it's fun to come up with ideas to engage your employees, even when you have challenging, stressful problems. If you take the mindset, hey, it's kind of fun, it's like this is a real stumper of a problem, like wow, we've never faced this before. But if you take the mindset, hey, this is kind of fun, this is like solving a puzzle to figure out how we solve this problem, how could we all not be more successful in life and in work if we adopt this mindset? So I'm playing with this idea of deep fun, and I'm thinking there might be a small fun book in there.
Oh, I like that. One of the things I always did to I have two sons, motivate them to work chores in the house was I never talked them about chores. We gamified it.
Oh
And
yeah,
so
totally right. Yeah.
we gamified it, and we would make little songs to announce it. So if it was clean sheet day, there was the clean sheet day song,
Love
right?
that,
And you'd
love
go
that.
around, you start the day, and you go around and sing. Everybody would catch up on this was when they were young, right?
Yeah,
And then they knew to take the sheets off the bed, bring
yeah,
them up to the laundry room, and they were going to get done. But I will suggest that even though they're older now, we still gamify it. And I just think it became second habit. And I like this idea, Michael, of your book on creating fun, because I think sometimes when we're dealing with those heavy challenges, if I can somehow look at the fun in solving that puzzle,
yeah.
my goodness, what engagement I would have in pursuing it.
Yeah, Totally, totally, right? And we know from research, ha plus ha equals aha. That more humor and laughter and play helps us be more creative and innovative.
Oh, love it. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me, Michael.
Oh,
It's
my honor.
always a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you, Lori. My honor, my pleasure. Thank you so much.